We're going to now take a journey at the CSS3 Demos website. We've already seen earlier in this module what the final produced product looks like. But now what we're going to do is look at how this entire course is going to be built on an HTML page that technically hardly changes throughout the entire course. What's really changing is the CSS3. Let's see how that's going to work. Throughout this course, you're going to notice that I'm using Visual Studio to manage my HTML and my CSS. Although this is my tool of choice, this course does not require that you have a dependency on Visual Studio. In other words, the technologies that we're going to consider, you could be using any text editor that you prefer, upload it to a server that, of course, would serve the HTML and CSS appropriately. I also want to showcase that within Visual Studio, if you are using it, that if I go to the Extension Manager, I have installed the Web Essentials extension. This gives me some advantages in the CSS document, such as targeting CSS3 and having other features that make it easier to manage. The HTML document that serves as the basis for the entire course is right here. It really doesn't change. With very, very few additions that are going to be added to the header section, the actual body of this HTML document will not change at all. You can see this is an HTML5 document. And as I'm scrolling down, we notice the unordered list of line items that represent the topics for the course. There's an article tag that's an about, a section tag that refers to an HTML form for input, a footer, an empty script tag, and the closing of the body and the HTML tag. All in all, 65 lines of HTML. This is how it looks when rendered in a browser. So we can see this is the site that, although we previewed it earlier in its finished state, at this time has much to be desired. There's absolutely no styles whatsoever being applied. I'm going to expand the header and introduce a link tag. And we're going to reference one called style.css. And let's take a look at that here. So to begin with, notice that this particular style sheet begins with the character set referencing it as UTF-8. Although this is not required, my personal experience has shown that certain browsers only work appropriately if this is indicated at the top of the style sheet for certain features. So I recommend putting that there at the top of all CSS documents. Lines 3 through 16 are showcasing what would be the appropriate color scheme for this particular site. You could look at it this way. Perhaps some designer has said this is the color palette that you can use for your site. So I have all of those in this comment here so that I can reference it later on. In this region down below called CSS Reset, if I expand that out, you'll notice that this is from Eric Meyer at his meyerweb.com site. This is a CSS reset that also includes HTML5 elements so that you can apply a global reset, so to speak, to everything that you have. Now this region that was made available inside the CSS document is possible by that extension that I showcased earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that. I'm going to surround this area with a region. I got to there by right-clicking that selected area. I'm going to call this colors. And now, of course, I can collapse that region as well as the CSS reset. Because I don't want there to be a typing exercise just to cover some of the basics, I am going to add some definitions here For the elements on the page, these are already included in a region. So I'm going to collapse that. And I'm also going to add something for the IDs. So I'll collapse that. And I'm also going to collapse the elements. I'm going to save this. Go back to the HTML. And now with everything that's been saved, let's see how this looks in the browser now. So this is how the site looks now rendered in a browser. Notice that we've made some improvements. The header is looking like it's starting to come to life, but the rest of this page is really lacking. We're going to be focusing on how to improve on this content throughout the course. The main objective of this demonstration was to get us comfortable with the following. First of all, this HTML document is the basis for the remainder of the course. None of the content's really going to change. We're only going to be adding a few other things here in the header section. This style.css is the main attraction as far as this course is concerned. We're going to be adding more and more to this file in order to demonstrate the features of CSS3. At this time, we have not used any new features in CSS3. The existing definitions for elements and for the IDs that have been targeted are all using CSS 2.1 features or features that came into existence prior to that. The takeaway here is that because we have this existing style sheet, it could represent an existing style sheet at your site. How you can now take this foundation and build on top of it and slowly introduce the features from CSS3 that you would like in your site. So for this module summary, hopefully you understand the purpose of this course. So showcase those features of CSS3. Hopefully you also feel comfortable with CSS technology concepts. And you understand the basis for how we're going to move forward with demonstrations is going to be using Visual Studio as our editor. And we're going to be building on top of a single HTML file and working primarily with a style.css file to introduce those features. I look forward to sharing CSS3 secrets with you in the next module.